Hello, everyone.
Are live, my friends.
Yes. Thank you, Christian. Hello, everyone. My name is Vaughn Harris, and I'm one of the coaches here at Coaching Season. And tonight we're going to premiere a new series of episodes with you called Transformative Conversations, where we talk about success stories for people that are making miraculous changes in their lives and just making some things happen for them. And we have a wonderful guest with us tonight. She's a friend, a former colleague, a former classmate. She's many, many things, but she's a very, very talented author, and her name is Jen Epstein, and she is the writer of a book called Don't Get Too Excited. And we're going to hear all about that in our conversation tonight. But I just want to give you a little background into Jen. She is an author, she's an activist, she's an advocate. And she was raised by two mental health professionals, and she suffered from anxiety and irrational fears as a child, and she was finally diagnosed with OCD when she turned 21. So she's really going to give us some perspective on what that meant for her life and how it kind of impacted her. But she's a very talented individual. She got her BA degree from Ramapo College in New Jersey and her master's from the New School of Media Studies with me. And I know how talented she was there, so I'm very excited for her to talk about to us tonight. Currently, she works for the One Club for Creativity, and it's a nonprofit organization that exists to support, and celebrate the global creative community. She's a passionate mental health awareness advocate, and she's here to share with us just her insights and her knowledge. But I wanted her just a little bit to talk about the success, because I know as a working professional here in New York City, it takes a lot for us to step back and to move into different areas where we say I want to try something new, because we're so set in doing what we do in our day-to-day jobs and our careers, and it's for us to decide, I want to write a book. I want to be an author. I think I have a memoir in here somewhere, and I really want to tell my personal story. It takes a lot of courage, commitment, and dedication to do those kinds of things. But when you decide to do it, it's so important to strike out there. And I wanted her, just to talk a little bit about one, the success of her book, and what it took for her to do it. So first, I wanted to just give Jenna a few minutes to introduce herself to everyone. Jen, it's up to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Vaughn. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. Yes, so the way that Don't Get Too Excited came to fruition was through a writers group at my former employer, Discovery, now Warner Brothers Discovery. We had this safe creative space for people to kind of decompress after the regular workday. And my colleagues knew me as like a operations manager or specialist, someone who worked behind the scenes and didn't necessarily show their creative chops all that much. But I started one of the genres that I feel most closest to is personal essay and memoir. And I started writing some pieces. And through that, I, disclosed to them that I had OCD.
Right.
And, some of them knew, many of them did not. And certainly none of them knew that I, ever had any passion or, affinity for writing. But yeah, they basically, I shared it with them, and they said, "This is a book." They said, "You need to share this with the world." And so they were really just, very supportive. And so I started putting together sort of like the skeleton for a collection of personal essays about living with OCD, more through the lens of less about the actual condition and more about how there are universal themes
Right.
within that, like I have a chapter on travel anxiety. I have a chapter on doing laundry in New York. So everybody can, a lot of us can relate to what it's like to deal with the laundromat,
Yeah.
right?
That was one of my
Writing.
personal favorites, by the way.
Well, that was not in the original manuscript. I added that in the final edit. So
Glad you did.
yeah. Um, some of them are more personal, about being in the hospital for a surgery. But it's people can relate to what it's like to deal with the bureaucracy and sort of like what kind of level of care you receive. So all of these things are through the lens, through how someone with OCD perceives these specific situations, but they're more universal themes. Um, so that was sort of the skeleton for it, and then I happened to be perusing Facebook one day, and I found an ad for come and enjoy a bucolic retreat in Vermont and get all your meals. And what it turned out was they were vetting people for a competition, and I kind of pooled my money together and put my schedule together so that I would be able to participate in this competition. And if you've ever seen the show Shark Tank, it was kind of like Shark Tank for writers because I
Mhm.
had to put together a marketing plan and in addition to the manuscript, I had to put together a marketing plan and cover art. I had to work with a cover art designer on different design plans, and I had to do a public reading to see how, like all these things were scored in addition to the original manuscript. First time I ever broke out in hives, but I won. So
It
the,
feels
the
like a boot camp.
well, that is exactly what it was. It was a boot camp. I mean, especially for someone who struggles with anxiety and irrational fears.
Right.
So that in itself was an I would consider just going through that process to be a success, and also the camaraderie with other people that I was working with.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, so I won the prize was a publication contract, and thus don't get too excited came into the world.
That's very exciting. And I have to tell you, I love your comedic spin on the topic, and you, 'cause I have to say, you made it very approachable, you made it accessible. And as a person living with a disability myself, I understand what it means to kind of, to quote a phrase from my British friends, to take the piss out of something, because so many times people think that a disability, a conversation around disability has to be so serious all the time, and it's
Right.
so heart wrenching, and you know empathy porn, and all that kind of stuff. But you made it funny, you made it lighthearted, and you made it accessible in a way, and approachable for people who may be dealing with the same issues that don't really understand what their diagnosis is right now. But you struck a lot of nerves, and I thought about myself when it comes to my laundry, and how funny I am about bed bugs and all kind of things like that. It just was in tears and laughter at certain points of while I was, reading the book. And so I had to, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it a little bit. So let me ask you something. As we delve into the questions a little bit, you know, what inspired you to write the book? What were you doing when you said, "Well, I'm gonna just pull all of this together and make this happen"?
Yeah, I mean, the inspiration was, just came from writers group, from what their feedback. It had to do with what was going on in my life at that time. I was dealing with a physical illness, and with having this surgery. Uh, just a variety of personal and professional challenges that I was experiencing then. And sort of this was my way of, coping through creativity um, yeah, I mean, my mantra is that humor is healing,
Yes,
both for the reader and for the author.
it
So
definitely is.
It was a very cathartic experience for me writing. Don't get too excited.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I laughed at myself a lot. And then there were a few times where, yeah, I just broke down and cried. So yeah. So it's all part of the process, and it is just a very invigorating part of the process too. So
Wow. Well, what were some of those challenges that you came across during the process?
while I was writing it,
Hmm.
a lot of it is, with my subtype of OCD, I have a tendency to look for the perfect. So, you know, I would worry that I was going to miss a deadline because I would get hung up on how does this sentence read, like it needs and just the continuous fine tuning, like from um media studies and from editing, we know, yeah, like you could just keep going on and on and on and on and on, but eventually you have to say goodbye to your baby, right?
Right.
So
That's
so it's the
great.
same kind of thing, but yeah, it is more than just feeling close to something. It is dealing specifically with um how what those personal expectations are of myself. So
Yeah.
during that process. So yeah. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
That's amazing. And I noticed at the end of the book, you thank so many people that were a big part of the experience for you. But I was just wondering, in that, who was one of your greatest supporters during this process?
Certainly the writers group. I mean, I definitely um formed a different connection with my mom.
Mhm.
She likes to think that this book is about her. It's really not.
Well, I love that you dedicated it to her. So
But it
I
is about
certainly
the
appreciate
evolution of our relationship and reconnecting after, being estranged for a number of years. So,
it. Right.
through a variety of circumstances from my childhood. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think my mom, was definitely a supporter, even though she kind of felt like I wasn't necessarily fair to her. Although, I mean, really, I celebrated my
Yes.
relationship with her. That's just her point of view.
Right.
But yeah, so I think she was very supportive. I have a wonderful group of friends who were incredibly supportive. New school alumni, fellow friends from the new school, absolutely supportive.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, from various ecosystems of my life, I had a great support network, absolutely.
Right. Including the ladies you go karaoke with.
Oh yes, choir ladies,
Yes,
yes,
the choir ladies.
and Roxy,
I
who
love that. I
was
feel like I know Roxy after the way you described
great.
her book. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Okay, well that's really good. And a lot of times what I want people to understand is, when you're making these big moves in your life, sometimes you do need a support system. You do need to find that network, that family, that community that comes to you. And they might not actually be your actual family, but sometimes you have to find that family that will support you and encourage you to keep moving forward in whatever change or whatever thing you're trying to do. So I think that it was wonderful that you had the support network to help you flesh out when your ideas and your thoughts, but also to give you that support that you needed to tell you to keep going forward. Because I know there had to be days when there was writer's block, or you
oh
just
yeah,
didn't feel like it, or you didn't think the idea was good at all, and you wanted to scrap the whole thing. I know those days happen, but it's just like, well, you kept pushing forward, and now you have a beautiful product to show for it.
well, thank you.
What were some of your greater fears at the time when
How
you
much
think
time
about
have you got? No, I mean, when the book came out, for part of the whole marketing was, one of the was a newspaper article where the title was "Brooklyn author explains what it means to worry about everything." So it's not.
Wow, sure.
kind of hard to separate what was my
Yeah.
greatest fear. But you know, I guess my greatest fear was how how people would perceive my story, whether I would whether it would be helpful, or um uh how it was, what the impact was going to be, what the reactions were going to be from my colleagues who weren't in writers group and didn't know this about me, who discovered the book, how the rest of my family was going to react. All of these things were a concern, a
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of times we do wonder and worry about, will we be accepted when we make whatever the changes are that we're going to make? What kind of impact that's going to have in your community, in your life, with your coworkers, with your friends, with your partners. There's so many different people that your lives touch. So I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that you were able to navigate that in such a beautiful way with the book, and because you were very honest and you were very open in your discussion, and in the fact that you use humor to cut through some of those biting moments.
Right.
I think that really helped, because I think a lot of times people just don't understand. And I think the clarity that you had throughout the book in explaining the situation, because you opened my eyes to a lot, and I've known you for years, but a lot of the things that you talked about helped me understand it more. And I'm so thankful that I had the time to read the book and really get some clarity on people that have OCD and anxiety issues, because that's important to understand. I think a lot of times we're just moving through life and not really paying real attention to what's going on around us. And there are people going through a lot of different things. So I'm so glad that you were able to share that.
Well,
You know,
thank
very
thank
interesting. What was one of the happiest moments throughout the process for you?
I really loved working with my editor.
Mhm.
It was a really collaborative process. She really pushed me. I um, created new pieces that weren't in the original manuscript, like the laundromat one. So,
Right.
um, I mean, we there's one thing that you don't have in the audiobook version, is that there's a like a photo collage.
Oh,
Um, and there's different photos with captions, humorous captions from so there's one, like, for from the chapter about traveling to Costa Rica. It's like, it
yeah,
has me drinking coconut water and just sort of like looking off camera, like, hmm,
right.
what am I
Pensive, and what's going to happen next?
what's gonna happen next? So, like,
Right.
oh, I've got the moisture wicking socks. I've got the and what else do I have? So
Right.
we
Right.
came up with the captions for that. We just had a lot of fun, and it really put me at ease, and really, and also made me feel really supported through the process. So
I'm sure it's good to have that in an editor, because she didn't stifle your creativity. She allowed you to blossom
yeah,
even
yeah,
more, and that's a beautiful thing, because it opened up a whole new space for you. And that brings us to my next question. Is there anything that you learned about yourself that you didn't know?
again, how much time do you have?
We'll
uh,
give you a few minutes.
yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about myself. I going through the marketing process, I learned that I really loved talking to readers. I loved hearing their stories, and building community. Um, I it was, as I said, it was a very cathartic experience, and I developed new coping mechanisms, I think, through the process. Um, what else? Yeah, I mean, I learned how to have fun doing podcast interviews, and and radio interviews. and about navigating the literary industry, about navigating working with publishers, navigating
Yeah.
working with
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of those different. It's a whole other animal from other industries. So and in that respect also, there were times where the OCD played into that. Like if you get like some radio silence when you're trying to get a response about something, like, oh, did I do something wrong? Like, was it me? Did I do something wrong? Like, and
Right.
like what? Like, like the narcissism kind of starts to hit. It's like, yeah, it's not you. They're just busy, or
Right.
so. Yeah. So I learned about just navigating through that process as well, which was
Wow.
important.
How did it change your activism? Because I know you're a big mental health activist and advocate. How did that feed into that more for you?
Yeah, I did an event with NAMI NYC, a workshop on coping through creativity with an art therapist. She did an exercise, a drawing exercise. I told them, about my experience writing and how that helped to cope. And
Hmm.
then we did a writing exercise with that as well. And I just, really discovered that organization and applied to be an advocacy ambassador. Um, to we share our stories with legislators, and um, ask for their support on bills that legislative actions that will benefit the mental health community in New York. So I feel like I've really been able to um, become a part of that organization through volunteering and activism. Um, I also do. I'm a host for for one of their support groups, and all of these things really help with having the lived experience as well, and being able to tell your story. Um, and Yeah, that's been great. Activism. I'm very much in addition to mental health, I'm very much a healthcare activist, especially in terms of getting access to mental health treatment, um, and medication, which is can be a real challenge in in our private insurance system. So sharing, trying to really advocate and raise awareness for that as well through activism.
That's wonderful. I know from personal experience, since I've become so much more of an advocate for people with disabilities now, and constantly having to tell my story and
Yeah,
how it fits in, but I also have to be the champion for others,
absolutely.
people with invisible disabilities, people with, blindness or hard of hearing or whatever their situation may be.
Yeah,
I also have to be the advocate for them too. So I think that it's important to, one, open people's eyes more and to share these lived experiences, and to, I don't want to use the word normalize, I want to humanize the experience,
humanize. Yes,
so
absolutely.
that we're not about our we're not our medical diagnosis. We're actually human people with,
Right.
with our lived experiences, and we're still working and living and loving and doing all the things everybody else does with a different challenge. And
Yeah.
I think that it's important to, to be out there and to bring voice to a lot of times people that are voiceless and not heard. So I think that it's good that we can use these skill sets that we have, and to help other people, because I know that was a big part of the book too, and you wanted to help other people who are having a similar experience. And I
Yes.
think that it's important for people to do that in whatever form it fits. What attributes do you think you possess that brought you to this success?
Well, a good sense of humor,
Yeah.
and a lot of strong will and determination. Um, that's key. All of these things are key to really being able to push forward and persevere. um, and take on these kinds of projects, and to not negate yourself too much, and put too much pressure on yourself too.
Right.
um but yeah, I mean, since writing the book, I have pushed myself in my treatment,
Mm.
moving away from just specific talk therapy into doing cognitive behavioral therapy, and something called ERP, which is exposure response prevention, which you know I never would have done before that,
Right.
because it is exhausting.
Mhm.
It's frustrating. It is, tremendous work. And you have to want it. You have to be committed to it, and willing to just say, okay, I'm going to live with uncertainty right now, and I'm going to take a risk. And as we discussed, I made a career change very
Right.
much into my midlife. So that everything has been a risk, and I don't think before I wrote this book that I ever would have been, ready to make these kinds of changes. So
Yeah. Well, one thing I know about you, you've always been one of those people that like to take on a new challenge or a new opportunity. So I'm not surprised that you did this in any way. Totally not surprised. And I learned so much about you. Even your, going to Israel to study,
mhm.
in your high school years, and doing all those things, and then, pursuing your degree at the new school, and then going into the other doc program that you were doing too. So there's so many things that you do push yourself, you know. I will give you credit for saying that. You definitely push yourself. And I think that that's one of those things that I also believe that you need in order to make big changes in your life. And that could be anything, whether it be, I think I want to go after a new kind of job or a different career, or I want to move to another state. Oh, I want to come out, or I want to get engaged. I want to do all these things. There's so many things that people want to do. I want to start a business. So there are so many opportunities, but I think that if you don't put in the hard work, and if you're not dedicated to it, I don't think it's going to happen for you. You're going to run into so many pitfalls because there's so many things out here that can slow you down. But if you're not determined and dedicated, you're just going to get stuck. You're just going to sit and you're just going to wait, you
Yeah.
know, and till whatever that magic day comes, and you say, okay, I'm going to do this today. So
Right.
I think it means something when you say you push yourself, and you strive for greatness. And I know that your parents being such, medical professionals, I could almost imagine you thumbing through their books, and trying to, navigate for yourself even as a kid.
I became pretty well versed in the DSM-4 manual, I have to say.
Right, right. That's wonderful though. Just think about that, because the next question is about your growth. How do you feel your growth has changed you?
I mean, definitely doing this kind of therapy has really changed me. Even in the last, 6 months, I there's a chapter where I kind of joke about storing mail in my oven, because well, that's not the case anymore. I started cooking because of various physical health issues that were going on, and really wanting to make a change, in various aspects of my personal development.
Mm.
My physical health was a big part of that as well. And so that in that in conjunction with doing the cognitive behavioral therapy and ERP. It's for both. It's both for physical reasons, as well as to live with uncertainty and push myself,
Mhm.
to do things that, out of fear of fire.
Right,
Oh well, so the apartment might catch on flames. That's
right.
the risk I'm gonna have to take.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's powerful. And, at least you can see it. You can see the growth. You can see the change. I see a lot of confidence. I see a lot of dedication. I see a lot of, just a fierceness that, that you didn't always show us. And I'm happy to see that. I'm very proud of you in this moment, in this time.
Thank
What advice would you give others who are wanting to do something similar?
Uh, oof. um, I mean, if it's something that you're passionate about and that you love, go for it. And don't judge yourself too much and pace yourself, there's it doesn't all need to be done in one day, you know and it's always, it's easy enough for us to say this, right? And then not follow that in our own lives. I'm like, oh, I should have, I didn't, I only did, I only ran for 20 minutes instead of an hour. I only cleaned the apartment, but I didn't write that piece. I didn't edit that piece that I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, but it's okay,
Hmm.
because tomorrow's another day. So take it slow, enjoy, have fun with it. And if it's something that you really love and you're passionate for, just go for it.
Right, right. I'm sure that was a lesson learned. I think that a
It's a
lot of
lesson I still continue to learn on.
right, and we're still going
And
to
I
learn.
remind myself of.
Right. I think as we get older, we're willing to take on more chances than we even did as younger adults. I think that it's something because you say, well, what do you have to lose now? Let's go into it. Let's jump into it. Like how you jumped into your physical health also and made that a priority. Because I love the chapter on your personal trainer and how you thought that was something for the super rich and that
Hmm.
1% to do. So I'm glad that you
Yeah.
tackled that in one of our future sessions here. We're going to have a conversation with a personal trainer in what that means. But I like that, it means something for you to take charge of your life and to, take more control. That's always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other tips for any future writers out there?
um you know fi- approach your if it's you need to just you'll need to decide whether it's something that you want to pursue outside of your day job, if it's something that and that you're writing your novel um at night or on the train. um and you know or if it's something that you want to go back to graduate school for. um these are all decisions that only you, the individual, can make for yourself. So just listen to your instincts. That would be my advice.
Wow. Wow. Where's your favorite place to write?
My favorite place to write, it's definitely in a bucolic setting like Vermont.
Right.
So uh, um I
You want
spend
to be
it.
you want to be in paradise. I got you.
Yeah, and for the last couple of years, I've been trying to pull together my money to do an international writing retreat where I'm in like the south of France or Tuscany or something, and I'm staying in a villa and like riding into town on a bike and picking up baguettes and cheese. So it's like that is my dream. I will get there
Right.
someday. It's on the bucket list, but yeah.
Right. And a
So
few bottles of your favorite wine.
I gotta have the vino for sure.
So if you had a choice, would you do it again?
Well, I am in a new writers group now, and they are a wonderful supportive group of women that I've been writing with for a little over a year now. And I blog occasionally, and sort of the idea is to see whether a new book emerges from that. So I'm not going to say whether or not I would do it again. I'm sort of going through the process of seeing what happens.
Right.
But But again, it's like it doesn't need to be done in all in one day, and I just have to keep telling myself that. So
Because as a writer, the thoughts are coming organically. Is that's kind of how it works, right?
most of the time,
Mhm.
not always. Sometimes you're there's the writer's block, or there's that's not really what I wanted to say, but can I just vomit out the first draft? No, that's hard for someone with OCD to just vomit out the first draft. There is no vomiting out the first draft. You
Right.
just so that's something that I have to really tell myself, like, just vomit out the first draft and get it over with. So,
Because you're striving for perfection.
right.
You want
Right.
every word to be a
Right.
Pulitzer. So,
Right.
so I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Well, that's wonderful. I think that it's good to see, what can be created. And I know, as I said, this started out as a bunch of different essays for you, and just kind of expressing yourself, and going through a catharsism, as it were. But look what you created. So I think that that's very important, and I think it's liberating, it's powerful, and I think you touched on a lot of topics, because I never really thought about, the whole moving process that you went through with the
Yeah.
basket. What's your favorite name for your basket?
The bubby cart, is that what you're
Yes,
talking
the bubby cart.
about?
The bubby cart, and I
Yeah.
have three of them in my home, so I understand the need for the bubby cart living in New York
Bubby
City,
cart.
and the
Uh,
idea of thinking you could move across town or even down the block with a bubby cart is,
and
is
papers flying everywhere. So
is just amazing to me. And I think about how many times I've seen people carrying furniture on trains, and I was like, oh, this story is so real. It's so New York.
Mhm.
And I think that you captured that in such a beautiful way that I could hear the wheel rattling on the street. I
Mhm.
could see the papers flying off, and you really captured that. And I'm gonna share out. We're gonna share it on our site, the name of the book and everything about the book, so people can come and grab a copy. I'm gonna get the hard copy now, because I want to
Oh,
go through the pictures. Go
gotta
through the
see the
pictures
picture.
and get that autograph. So I'm
Mhm.
really excited about that, and I just wanted to wondered if you had any other questions for me, and what coaching season is all about, because I wanted
I
people to understand
Yeah.
how coaching season works, and what we're trying to do to help people to find those new moves in their life, to find those changes, and to be able to help people get there and help you walk you through it. Because I was lucky enough to have a good coach in Christian, and he said to me, I think you really, as we were moving along in the process, he said, I think you're really good at this. You're a good listener, and you're able to talk people through a lot of stuff, and I think you might need to try it yourself. And he kind of opened that door of being a coach for me. But I think that what I'm learning from all of our different clients is that everybody's at a space of growth and change and development. I think the pandemic kind of opened up a
Yes.
space for everybody, where we were so busy before, and so busy 9 to 5 clocking and running, and meetings and events, and oh, I got to go to the gym, and oh, I'm going to on vacation and doing all these things. But when we suddenly became locked down in our
Mhm.
own little spaces, it kind of opened up a world of possibility. And then when you come out of it, you want to do something different. I don't know if I want to go back to my regular old 9 to 5. I might want to
Right.
change it up a little bit. So now people are doing that. There are several friends of mine who actually had kids during the pandemic. And also, by the way, I loved your discussion around
About
children.
motherhood.
Yeah, I love that section. I think that could be its own television show. You know, when you were describing it, I could literally see it, on television. But I think that it's something to be said about making these kinds of moves and changes in your life. And I think that you definitely transformed yourself, and you transformed the experience. You've opened the door for other writers and women writers. For you to be so vulnerable in the space. I think that it shows you one the realness of the struggle sometimes, especially when you're dealing with any kind of illness, whether it be mental or physical or anything like that. I think in fighting the healthcare system, and just all that you have to go through, and knowing what questions to ask, because a lot of times people just don't know. I
Yeah.
think you open the door to that conversation too. So I'm very happy about that because I know a lot of people that are struggling in those situations. So I think that it's good that we can talk about these things now, and we're not hiding. Disabled people, people with mental and physical illnesses, are not hiding in the shadows.
No,
You
and
know,
it is so important.
yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, you're just such an important advocate and voice for this movement, and just have an incredibly calming presence and exterior, and you're a great
thank,
listener and a great interviewer. So, yeah,
thank
this
you. Right.
it's a perfect fit for you. Absolutely. Although there's no perfect, right?
I know, I know.
Right? I'm not supposed to say that,
You
but
told me there was no
if
perfect, but I
there
got
was,
I got you. Let me see if there's any questions from our audience. I think something popped up. Let me see if I can get to the screen. Let me see if I can make it a little bit larger. Okay. All right. Here's a good question. This was a good one, Jen. If you could give your younger self advice on what would you give?
oh, um. What advice would I give my younger self? Be ready for what's coming. Because it's not gonna be what you were expecting. So, and yeah, I mean, I even though there was an anxious part of me, there was also a fun loving spirit as well. And it's very important to get back to those roots. So I would tell my younger self, make sure that you bring that back again. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have to embrace it sometimes. I really feel like a lot of times we silence that voice, you know, but when you really reach back in and find that part of yourself, you
yeah.
know, it's good to tap back into that sometimes. And now look where you are, and look, it amazes me how we had all these thoughts, like say the thoughts we had about ourselves and our futures in our teen years, and then in the
Mhm.
20s,
Yeah.
then in the 30s. It's just like, well, none of that was important. None of it. And so this is why, these kinds of things are important. And that's what coaching is about. I love working with, teens and high school students and college students because I think that it's a vast space of the unknown, because our parents just kind of say, okay, well, it's time for you to graduate from high school. Good luck. Go on
Right.
out there into the world. And then you tapped into that in your book too.
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of interesting how now you're just out here in the unknown and trying to navigate the space. So it's good to kind of reach back and try to help people in the process of learning. But once again, I want to thank you for coming tonight. And I want to thank you for being my first guest on the show. It's really cool. I got one more question that's just popped up. Let me see. Okay. Do you find your doctors had a hard time figuring out what was happening?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't diagnosed with OCD until I was 21. And I was in therapy pretty much from not from birth, but like pretty close because, you know, with two mental health professionals as parents, they basically, had me in all
Right.
these different types of even like seeing some of their colleagues, which
Oh,
was always uh, so yeah. I mean, I think that maybe I think that they didn't necessarily, they may have been influenced based on what my parents were saying more
mhm.
than what was actually there. Um, so really it's more as an adult that a full spectrum diagnosis could be made. And
Right.
that could come from the way that I presented it rather than someone else being the spokesperson. So,
Wow. And you know what? That's a powerful learning because for me, for example, I had a situation a couple of years ago when I needed to get a new wheelchair, and the insurance company required that I go to a neurologist and get a
mm,
diagnosis.
uh-huh.
I have cerebral palsy, which is a birth defect that happens when there's a loss of oxygen to the baby during
Mhm.
the birth process,
Yeah.
and it affected. it affected the muscles in my legs, and I didn't have all the typical symptoms of people with CP. And so when I went to get this exam to get this wheelchair, the doctors were like, "You don't have CP. You're off the scale. Like you can do all these things." And I was like, "Okay, but I also go to the gym, and
Yeah.
I'm very active, and I'm not necessarily typical. Like I have a rare form of CP, so that within itself is something that's a little different. But now all of a sudden you're trying to tell me something that I've lived with my entire life
Yeah.
doesn't exist now." I said, "That's not what we're here for. I need you to fill out this paper."
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
you know. So
Yeah.
that's it's something when you learn some different things about yourself. And then I also learned that in different states, how you treat children with certain disabilities is different. Like
Hmm.
in New York State, a child born with CP would have a neurologist their entire life, and they would walk
Mm.
their entire life with them through your whole growth process and your development.
Mm.
But not in South Carolina. Did not
Uh-huh.
happen, and especially not in the late 70s, early 80s. It was not happening. So, I went to orthopedic specialists,
Yeah.
because they were trying to fix the problem with my legs. They didn't think about any of the other stuff because I wasn't on the scale like that. So,
Right. Right. Yeah.
you
If you fall with that, if you're not within that very specific box, then
right.
you become an enigma. So
Yeah, sure. For sure. Like I call myself in the gym, I'm that special unicorn. And
yeah.
people are asking the name of your book. So I want you to say the name of your book for the audience.
So the full title is
Yes.
Don't Get Too Excited. It's Just About a Pair of Shoes and Other Laments from My Life.
And those shoes, I remember seeing you wearing them all the time at school. So I think they're
Uh-huh.
great.
The Converse. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I
Until
was
I
going to wear
developed
some tonight.
fasciitis and almost fell over trying to wear
Yeah,
them. So like, oh, I'm getting older.
right. I was going to wear some tonight. I was
Orthotics.
afraid of the rain. I said, I don't want to get soaking wet in the rain
Right.
with them. But yeah. So, once again, like I said, I just have to thank you. Are there any more questions? Let me make sure there's nothing else coming. I want to make sure we answer everybody's question because it's important. Oh, perfect, perfect. Well, Jen, once again, thank you so much, and thank you for being the first guest here. And we really appreciate you coming out and sharing your journey. And we look forward to many, many more books. I'm excited about it. And like I said, if you want to reach out to us at any other time, if you want to come and talk to some of our clients, that's also a thing, because I think you have a lot to share. And also for everybody else listening out here, if we tapped into something that you want to work on, we're here to help you too. There's a lot of different coaches. We have executive coaches, we have lifestyle coaches like myself, that can help you to navigate whatever it is you want to do next in your life. Because we might have another author out there. You just never know.
Never know.
Once again, thank you, Jen, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, Vaughn. This was wonderful. I really had a great time.
Thanks. Me too. See you soon.
See you soon. Take care.